Good evening, folks. Welcome to the next webinar of TiE Mumbai. This is an interesting one. We have a Founders and CTO Tech Talk series, which we are starting in association with NTT-Netmagic. They have happily agreed to come and do a series of programs to help early stage entrepreneurs and growing entrepreneurs. The idea is if you have a problem, especially in your technology or you want a validation, NTT is there for you guys. And they are experts in scaling up. So which is what they want to kind of come and present to you folks. This is just first of the programs that we are starting. Interestingly, in this series, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring very interesting and exciting founders and CTOs from two different sectors so that you get a perspective as to how they're managing scaling up. And with that, let me also today explain to you the agenda. So first of all, we will have Sharad Sanghi, the CEO of NTT Netmagic. He's going to be doing an open welcome address. Followed by that, we're going to be having the Power Pact panel discussion. The panel discussion is going to be moderated by none other than our very own Sanjay Mehta. And following that, NTT has a surprise announcement for all of you. So hold your horses till then. We'll talk to you about it there. And without further ado, let me please welcome Sharad Sanghi, the CEO of Global Data Centers and Cloud Infrastructure for NTT India Limited. And for all of you who do not know, Sharad is a successful entrepreneur who started NetMagic 20 years ago. He's easily donned as the father of cloud and data centers in India. He recently got an entity to take majority stakes in NetMagic, and now NetMagic of Japan is also co-owner with Sharad. And Sharad has been a leading voice and a proficient for technology in India. He also is a prolific angel investor and he loves deep tech. So if anybody has anything to do with cybersecurity and deep tech, Sharad is the man. We'll also give you his email address. You can bombard him with all your decks and presentations later. And Sharad, if you're there, over to you for the opening keynote.
Thank you so much, Naveen. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, Sharad.
Okay, great. So good evening, friends. Welcome to Tech Talks among founders and CTOs. Today's topic is scaling fintech and media and entertainment startups. And thank you for joining this digital series brought to you in association with TiE Mumbai. The joy of Diwali is still fresh, and I feel it has helped refresh and energize business sentiment in a very challenging economic environment. Technology and business leaders have been compelled to rethink processes, strategies, and business continuity plans to be able to face uncertainties and adversities. There have been several learnings for businesses adapting and innovating to not just survive but build momentum, and that will help them thrive as the economy is bouncing back. The pandemic has also served as a wake-up call to enterprises to embrace digital in its entirety, giving rise to the new digital economy. My association with TiE goes back many years. Actually, I'm reminded of December 97, where I first met at a TiE event in Delhi. I met my mentor, B.V. Jagdish, and pitched my business plan to him for the first time. It was because of his angel investment that today NetMagic has reached the stage it has, with over 10 data centers in the country and now part of the NTT group. And it has been a privilege for me to, for NTT Netmagic and me to be associated with TiE, not only in this, but also in the startup series. We've got the Startup Challenge event series that we do, and we always do that along with TiE. So innovation remains core to the NTT Group's DNA. NTT Group invests almost $3.6 billion each year, funding R&D globally with over 2,500 research engineers and 16,000 patents across its research-focused organizations, and thereby making it one of the top 100 global innovators. In addition, NTT has also recently set up a $500 million venture capital fund called NTT Venture Capital, and it is headed by an Indian called Vab Goel. He's based in Palo Alto. So a lot of you, if you're looking, if you have interesting ideas and you've reached a certain stage, you can always reach out to NTT for a potential investment through their venture arm. So as I mentioned, last year we brought this NTT Startup Challenge to India, and we intend to do that every year, and we intend to partner with TiE because we had a fabulous response last time. India commands a very key role in NTT's global strategy, and this inspires us to pursue constant innovation and drive greater value for our clients as we enable critical business outcomes. In India also, we have 3 R&D centers and close to 100 dedicated R&D professionals who are focused on cutting edge technologies pertaining to cloud and artificial intelligence. I believe this current phase is destined to go down in history as the great rush for digital, very similar to the gold rush of olden times. We've all observed how organizations have accelerated the digital agenda, going many years ahead in a span of few months. A critical aspect of this transformation is obviously the digital infrastructure. So you have to have something which is always on, agile, and secure during this, especially during these trying times. So at NTT Netmagic, our engagement with our clients is changing in extraordinary ways during this crisis. As a technology partner, we are going beyond the traditional solution providers.
Thanks, Sharad. Thanks for the opening keynote. And I think more or less everybody knows about the success of NetMagic and how you guys have really helped enterprises in every aspect, making them enterprise scale ready. So thank you for this series also in terms of setting it up and getting the insights from founders and startups which have scaled rapidly, and how so personally I have seen across early stage startups at some point in time choking across when scaling up with customers, on tech aspects. So today we will be discussing across with our esteemed panelists about what are the do's and don'ts and how they have been successfully driving the whole scaling up side of it and getting the products on the cloud in this current pandemic where the customer has adopted technology at an accelerated pace. So I have got speakers like Karan Kirpalani, Vice President, Product and Services, NetMagic. Karan, has played two pivotal roles for nearly 2 decades. Has been part of the core team of the organization and worn many hats, from business development to product management and product marketing. And prior to NetMagic, Karan was associated with ICICI Bank as a part of online content and web application team. Next, we have got Adhil Shetty. Karan, can you just raise your hand and wave across so that
Hi
audience?
everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Adhil Shetty, co-founder and CEO of Bankbazaar. Adhil has been, forefront with the online financial marketplace, focused on helping consumers across the right financial products. And Adil's vision is to democratize finance and increase financial inclusion through Bankbazaar and making personal finance entirely contactless. Adil has also been named across as one of the best professionals and entrepreneurs under age of 40 by Economic Times and Fortune India. That's a great accolade, Adil. If you can say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Next is we have got Mahesh Chalil, CTO at BookMyShow. I think everybody knows BookMyShow, one of the most popular booking site, and senior engineer leader with 20 plus years of experience, 18 plus years in US, currently working as head of technology CTO with BookMyShow. Past experience working as a head of engineering at Near.co and software engineering with Nissan Digital, VP of engineering at Hotstar, senior engineering manager at Apple US, VP senior manager and strategist at Bank of America. I'm sure we'll have lots of learning from Mahesh coming across and BookMyShow, how they have survived the pandemic. Mahesh, if you can just say hello to audience. Thank
Hello
you,
guys,
Mahesh.
nice meeting all of you.
Next is Manish Bhatia, technology analytics and capabilities at Lending Card. Manish Bhatia is responsible for building scalable technology stack for the company, bettering operational agility, risk management, data and analytics, and driving strategic efficiency and improving all customer experience and acquisition as a part of the business growth. He has worked with Amazon as a CTO and steered all the tech and the software development for India payment business. He has also been headed as worldwide e-commerce platform group in India in his previous assignment and Amazon, bringing multiple innovations to the fore. Before joining Amazon, he has worked with a couple of startups, FedEx and JP Morgan Chase. Hey, welcome, Manish. If you can say hello to all the audience.
Everyone.
Thank you. Lastly, we have got Viral Mehta, President, Engineering Pocket Aces. His team has built a virality predictor based on real-time user interaction and engagement. He took over as operational and technical architecture of Loco, Pocket Aces' fastest growing brand, and now loco product team to bring in game live streaming to the platform. So before Pocket Aces at Microsoft headquarters, he had worked on the code every Windows based devices in the world uses every day. That's an awesome resume kind of stuff. Can you just say hello, Viral?
Hi guys.
Hey, thank you so much and welcome all of you. We'll get into the topic straight kind of stuff and discuss across in terms of last, pandemic, last 6, 7 months has been, life changing and altering for many early stage startups. And, everybody has been passing through those struggle. And some of them have really scaled up quite well. Some are planning across in terms of how do they manage across their next set of the roadmap, and how do they build across scalable infrastructure so that they can get more customer and they can deliver right customer experience. So let's start with Viral. How are you managing the current pandemic and in the current last 6 to 9 months, how have you managed across in a short 2 minutes, if you can help us with your challenges and pivots, what you have done across in terms of business and adoption of tech?
So we had two big challenges. One, we decided in early January to actually pivot our entire product and move from um, live quizzing and live interactive game shows to game streaming, which is a whole different thing. There were some technical overlaps, but otherwise, the whole different market, whole different thing. We were set to release, and the lockdowns hit. So we have been running a brand new product in a brand new market, including operations sales, and a whole new product with live streaming, game streaming, learning all of this during this pandemic. And we didn't get a chance to like actually pop open the champagne when we first released our V1 of the new pivot because everybody was scattered. So we've also had to learn how to work remotely without slowing down because we just launched the product. Like 80% of the work is still remaining ahead of us. We just launched our basic product in front of the users. So we've been going nonstop since
Understood. That's quite an interesting experience to be delved across. Adil, what's your view? How did pandemic hit you, and what were the do's and don'ts, and how did you guys manage the last 9 months?
Thanks, Sanjay, and CII for organizing this exciting event. I think the big change for us, and I think broadly this happened in most of financial services, there was a rapid migration starting April 1st to contactless. What that meant, right, is that we found at Bankbazaar that vast majority of our consumers were actually saying that, hey, I want a financial product, but I do not want to meet anyone, right? So don't send someone to my house to pick up my bank statements and my income tax records. Give me an experience that's 100% safe, that's 100% contactless. So the consumers very clearly were expressing a desire to have a no meeting, no paper experience. The banks on the other side were saying that, hey, listen, public transport is down. The bankers can't move around. We need a full tech solution. I think fortunately for us, right, and maybe Manish will talk about this also, but in January, the RBI allowed digital video KYC. So that was a game changer, right? So starting April, all resources, all investments went into quickly operationalizing this 100% contactless solution across lenders. This required rapid changes in technology, in terms of compliance, in terms of legal changes, supply chain changes. And I think April, May, June, right? Essentially, we're getting those changes in order. We've seen a quick bounce back in business. And what's very exciting, Sanjay, is that 80% of our business today is 100% contactless access to finance at Bankbazaar. And this we believe is a permanent change. So it's not that it happened and now things are going to go back to normal, but this is the new normal. I think we have clear line of sight that across banks, right, the CEOs are telling us that this is going to continue, that consumers, at least on the unsecured side, right, have fully gone digital. And this provides a new opportunity wherein I think just basis this contactless execution
Understood.
model.
So basically, video KYC was a big boon, possibly, what as you mentioned, Adil.
Yes.
Manish, what was your experience with the video KYC, and what's your did government really help, and how did the pandemic really did any challenges, or how did you manage the last 9 months?
Just to just additional to what Adil actually said, right? Um, Video KYC definitely helped us, and overall, that one more touchless means of actually getting to our customers and getting things done. There was eNAT, there is eSign. I think overall, even at lending cards, we are basically taking a step back and trying to figure out how do we completely revamp, not just tech, the processes, compliances, policies, everything's on the table. And it sort of gave us, obviously the business was slower because of the pandemic, it sort of gave us a little bit of breather, at least from a tech standpoint and product standpoint, to say, okay, if I had to think next 2 years, what would I do now? Without a lot of business pressure on you. So, we've definitely taken that opportunity to sort of take that step back. So it was an interesting one. I'd like to add one thing. While video KYC, eNAT definitely is something that has helped us when it comes to touchless, I think the overall ecosystem still not evolved to say, okay, 100% of our customers could do video KYC. 100% of our customers could do eNAT, because there's a lot of connect between, Aadhaar versus phone number versus there's so many complications that for, the edge cases sort of just fall out 30-40% of your customers, which we have to sort of really find a good solution to. So definitely there's a ecosystem that's required.
Thanks, Manish. That was quite helpful for fintech startups. Mahesh, lastly, coming to you before I move to Karan, what kind of challenges BookMyShow had, and how did you guys pivot, and your insights and from an entertainment industry, because most of the bookings and online bookings were done through
Absolutely.
BookMyShow.
First of all, good evening, everyone, and thanks for inviting me for this session as well. It's a great opportunity for me to meet many of you guys, as well as coming back from US. It's this kind of events is what exactly make you much more excited that you did the right thing, right? But let me just take a step back before the BookMyShow, because BookMyShow I just joined 2 months, but I can definitely give you a lot of insight from that. But before that, when I was with Near, what we did when the pandemic hit us, right? We decided, myself, our CEO, and all of us decided that we are just going to focus on one thing, which is going to make the market differentiate, right? And we stayed focused on it, and then we delivered a beautiful product with the 2-3 months of focus by August, right? And it was well received by our customer. So that is one strategy which worked extremely well. Stay focused, put all your stuff into the market differentiator, what you think could be a right thing. But when I came to BookMyShow, right? One of the biggest reasons why I joined with BookMyShow is exactly the same thing. What's the challenge it's actually processing during this pandemic, especially knowing that movie theaters are closed, there's no live events happening, right? And how would a company like that really survive? What would be that, the pivoting aspects to actually make it happen? So I think the company did amazing job in terms of like dealing with it. For example, they decided, even before I came, live events would be actually kind of like halting, and how do we leverage that space for online events, right? And when we are actually, have the movie theaters are closed, the company thought about how would we actually deal with the situation when the movies are back online? Is it going to be fully back online? Is it going to be 50%? Is it going to be just seat layout? I mean, how do we prepare for it when September or October when the movie theaters start opening, right? So that were two major lines. And then we kept on thinking about how do we completely monetize all our customers? We have like 50 million active users before the pandemic hit us, right? So that means all those users are with us. How do we maximum monetize? How do we make our payment gateway to get the maximum leverage out of it, right? I mean, what kind of optimization can we do there? And as you can imagine, with the 21-year-old company and with 13, 14 years, the BookMyShow, the real birth of it, there has been a lot of tech that's piled up, right? Always the typical challenge of feature versus the tech debts. When do we correct our course, right? I mean, when do we get many of the tech debts out of our way? So that has been one of the biggest pain points as well. So last 2 months, honestly speaking, where we are, there's a lot of course correction which we are doing. We are looking at the tech debts on our plate. We are looking at something called as BMS 2.0 vision. What does it mean after pandemic, right? What's our new business lines? How do we globally expand in terms of multi-tenant leaner, efficient organization? As you can
Understood.
imagine, any organization would be going through it, but that's where we are currently, as pandemic is concerned, but more focused
Sure,
execution.
understood. That was quite insightful. Karan, coming to you, you are the solution provider, and you would have seen across so many requests coming from various customers from your end, and I'm sure more customers would have added. What was your learning from all the startups or enterprises? You work with large enterprises, and what were their requirements? What changed in last 9 months for NTT, and how did you guys serve them?
So, Sanjay, you're right. We work with not just enterprises and mid-sized organizations, but we work with smaller companies as well, and with a lot of startups. For a company like NTT-Netmagic, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. It's been great because of the current worldwide situation. You've had a much greater uptake of technology. Clients across segments, across verticals have dialed up their use of cloud, dialed up their use of managed services. You need an overlay of security to go not just across the core, but across the edge as well. So we've had an increase in utilization across customers. We've had new customers coming on, customers who've increased their usage, their utilization and dependency on the cloud as compared to being, previously more in favor of on-premise IT. So that's been great. But one of the consequences is, and Viral talked about this, for a company, and Sharad talked about it as well, for a company like NTT and NetMagic, product management, engineering, product development is very much at the forefront of what we do. And we use, and we have used over the last maybe a decade, is that Lockheed Martin school or approach to product management, where we form what we call skunk works teams, where we get subject matter experts across networking and storage and security and operations and product management of cloud, and we put these guys in a room to develop a product together, right? And that becomes their singular focus for 2, 3, 4, 6 months, depending on the product. And now, obviously, we've had to pivot to a more distributed model because of what the current situation demands, and we've had to adapt to that a little bit. So it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. But having said that, from a service provider point of view, we're definitely seeing a significant uptake in just customers across segments, across verticals, increasing their utilization in terms of cloud and
Karan,
services and security.
does NTT have a product or a ready to or a starter kits and kind of stuff for early stage startups where, let's say, for example, an entrepreneur who is a non-tech entrepreneur but would like to build a fintech or a media tech company.
We do. We do.
How,
There's a bunch of different ingredients that go into play, given the nature of the industry, and just look at our panelists, right? They come from different verticals. You look at the audience, they'll be representing almost every vertical in the industry today. So the nature of the business is it's not an off-the-shelf product that you can just buy and then hand out to everybody. Obviously, technology, the ingredients, the bills of materials, the requirements of different organizations are all different, even within the same industry, right? Manish and Adhil will both tell you, even though they're both in the fintech space, they might have different approaches to technology and the way they look at their IT. The important thing for a service provider is to provide all the key ingredients for clients to choose in a flexible or an a la carte model, if you will, to be able to put together a solution that fits their requirement the best. Having said that, though, we do have something that's aligned towards startups that we're going to talk about towards the end of the session.
Understood. Thanks, Karan. Coming to you, Viral, if you had to, if a early stage startup had to put down a roadmap on the tech side, what would be a couple of recommendations which you would be giving across for early stage startup, which can build something on the infrastructure side so that the scale up becomes very easy?
Um, when we started Loco, my founder and I, we were joking that one of these days, if things go well, we are going to have this conversation where we'll be stressed out because suddenly lots of people showed up and our service crashed. That'll be a good problem to have. A month or 2 months later, that happened, and then we kind of laughed about it while we tried to fix it. One of the things, at least as engineers who have experience working in larger companies, this is my personal challenge that I have to constantly check against is you should not over engineer systems, because having come from a Microsoft, a Google, or Amazon, the scale is there, the longevity is expected from your solutions, and what that means is you end up really over engineering your solutions to meet hypothetical demand that might not ever show up. So shipping quickly is the most important thing you can do in startup in tech. So if it means if you can pick something off the shelf that is slightly more expensive, slightly not optimized, just pick it up, run with it, fix the problems as you go on, because the real information that you need to succeed or not actually comes from the market, how the users will end up using your products.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
That's
a
awesome.
fantastic point, actually. And that's a very good insight and something that we believe in as well.
Yeah, never over engineer for
I mean,
hypothetical
this
demand.
is my challenge. I came from Microsoft,
Sure.
and I had to deal with people's bad code. You can't call it bad code because it's still working 30 years later, but 30-year-old code
Sure.
that I have to deal with and fix and maintain all of that. So you always have that long-term vision. And I had to kind of teach myself not to think like that.
Sure. So,
And
Manish, what was your view if you had to recommend a strategy for early stage startups, saying that this is how they should be thinking about engineering or building a product, or you are head of analytics in terms of how do they view the data kind of stuff? While everybody talks of data, so what would be your recommendation? How would you put a strategy for early stage company?
it's to me or just
No, Manish.
No, to Manish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I think overall, what Viral said really, it rung a bell right for me, because hindsight is always 2020, and what you shouldn't do. And I'm also a very firm believer that strategies, while your vision is, you're behind a cause, you're trying to do something, but your strategies actually evolve as you move along. So it's always very, and if things were where you could design perfect solutions the first time, we would still be using Windows 98, right? So any product that gets used is changed, even at Amazon, right? So we know what scale really means. But even after 2 years of really thought process architecture, which is important so that you don't have to continuously break your head because we are expecting a scale, even that needs to be revamped, after a certain point, right? So that continuously going in, changing, is just, how you should sort of think about it. But I think there is, there is some level of planning, which is also important from an architecture perspective. Don't over-engineer, but also don't be extremely scrappy that you'll have to probably change it every time a different request comes in. So, some level of insight where, you have a little bit of runway, but
Sure.
definitely don't over-engineer.
So balance it out. Adil, what would be your view and recommendation for early stage startups? What kind of strategy you would recommend to get the infrastructure right when they begin across or at early stage?
So, Sanjay, I think Viral and Manish covered it in detail, and I think they have far more expertise on that point. I think I want to pick up on a point that Manish made when he left off on his last comment, which is that for any early stage startup, right, especially in the fintech space, I think the mantra should be collaboration. I think we exist in an ecosystem today. I remember 5 years ago, a question used to be asked saying, "Hey, you're a fintech company. Are you going to compete with a bank? Are you going to be fighting with each other? Is it going to be very tough?" But I think what we have realized, right, is that this ecosystem is all about collaboration. You're collaborating with someone for your infrastructure. You're collaborating between a fintech and a bank to build a balance sheet. You're working with various solution providers, because I think one of the points that we were discussing is maybe 50% of your consumers use video KYC, but their solutions around offline Aadhaar KYC, the solutions around central KYC. So I think if I was to share some insight for a young startup out there, it would be about seeing how you can collaborate to move yourself forward. I
So
think doing
that brings me to let's say, for example, when you evaluated your video KYC platform, right? Did you build it in-house? Did you collaborate with somebody? And video KYC in India, how successful it was? Was there any packet losses while the transmission was happening? Was that comfort? So how did you? I mean, if a startup had to, let's say, choose today, what could they learn from your experience?
I think everything is iterative, constant improvement process. So I think when you probably start off, right, you find that your conversion is at X%, but that's not where it ends. I think what we do is look at data quarter over quarter, and every quarter we see a significant improvement. I think on fintech, even more interesting than constant improvement, right? There's been a whole array of solutions which have opened up, each of which can pick up some of the loss that you're seeing on your core solution. So just to give you an example, right? Currently, it's at CII, it's at other industry bodies. Fintechs are constantly engaging with the regulator, saying that, hey, fantastic job on video KYC. Hats off to you. It actually happened. Can you imagine in Jan 2020? Until Jan 2020, legally, you couldn't give out a financial product above 60,000 rupees without meeting a consumer. But fortunately, Jan 2020 was a milestone and video KYC took off. But we're in talks with them saying, hey, what about central KYC? Because we have a central KYC database which has 200 million consumers, but yet, right, very, very few people are using that for digital onboarding. There's a offline Aadhaar KYC solution, which we all know has 1 billion users on it, but very few people are using that. So I think what we've realized is any solution you launch, you'll constantly improve. And with fintech, I think what's exciting is there's a range of 2, 3, 4 solutions. If the regulator were to support, right, and the financial institutions compliance teams were to support, could create an array of digital options such that 100% of your consumer base could actually transact 100% contactless.
Understood. Coming to you, Mahesh, with your experience, what would be your recommendation to early stage startups in terms of building their roadmap on the tech infrastructure?
Yeah, so it's depending on what time are you asking this question, right? I mean, you're asking this question in 2020 versus 2000 versus 2010. The answers would have been so different, right? But sitting in 2020 and seeing some of the four good startups over here, I would just agree with all these guys. Actually, the point is just keep it simple, stupid, right? And we always joke about in bank as well. We create all these strategies, right? We build the strategies to get the bonus. right? And we joke about it all the time. We created all this fantastic 2-year strategy for right. And that's a mission statement, right? 2025 infrastructure strategy. So there is this one line which I was actually reading today morning. There is all this stuff that everyone else does, even if it is stupid. So you do it too. Start thinking about the collective interest, right? And honestly speaking, depending on which stage of the startup, where they are, they have to just actually keep thinking what would make me relevant at the moment in the industry, what would make me relevant for my customers, right? I mean, I always say captain tactical wins. You keep having a long-term vision where you want to reach, but make sure that you're actually having a fantastic execution strategy for making it happen right now, right? Because depending on how unique your industry is, how unique your customer base is, or how unique value proposition you have, if you don't get that execution right, you would be definitely lagging behind. So my thing is, just do what is right for what exactly required at that particular time. Don't overthink, don't over engineer. I completely agree with Viral that, I mean, depending on where these guys are coming from, right, they could end up over engineering it, but as long as they can keep focusing on keeping it simple, they will always find the solution. But
Understood.
it's a mindset. Completely, it's a mindset. Understanding where they stand.
Very true. Karan, coming to you, I mean, everybody talks about cloud. It's like de facto strategy, right? Everybody wants to be on the cloud, but we see a lot of jargons floating around on multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. Uh, you know, I mean, if you had to describe across a strategy or lay down a strategy for a startup, how should they think about cloud?
So it's an interesting question, and we were chatting amongst ourselves yesterday. All the panelists and I, and Viral asked a very simple question. He said, "Is anybody today not on the cloud?" And I'm inclined to agree with him that the answer would be no. Having said that, though, it's an interesting question. I think the general consensus is hybrid cloud is really the way to go. I mean, there was recently a study from Flexera, right, which is RightScale, where they polled hundreds of CIOs and CTOs across segments and verticals and found that something like 87% of them were pursuing a hybrid cloud strategy. Now, having said that, and I'll stress this again, regardless of whether they're a startup or a Fortune 50 company, they all need to define their cloud strategy based on business requirements. And the strategy will first and foremost decide, A, what is the best execution venue for various workloads. Now, that could be public for this set of workloads, and it could be private for a different set of workloads. Now, once you determine what's the best execution venue for certain applications, now you come to choosing a technology stack that suits you. So, for example, if you want to containerize your applications, do you want to go with pure Docker? Do you want to go with Kubernetes? Do you want to go with OpenShift? Do you want to go with VMware's Tanzu? Do you have the skills in-house to manage your preferred technology stack? So once you determine your technology stack, then it's time to do your due diligence into the various providers to see which one is best aligned with you, both technically, culturally, what their roadmap is, what are their skills when it comes to being able to manage mission critical applications for you. Do they have an agile methodology in terms of their operations to be able to do all of this? So that's part of the due diligence that any organization would need to do, regardless of whether you're a startup, whether you're a mid-market, whether you're part of the Fortune 50. But the general consensus is hybrid cloud is really the way to go. Now, having said that, there will be outliers, right? There will be people who are pure private. There will be people who are pure public. But I think you're seeing more and more adoption of hybrid cloud as a strategy that will serve organizations over the next 5 years.
Understood. So that's quite interesting in terms of determining what's the end goal and try to map across the cloud strategy. Mahesh, at BookMyShow, what's your view on cloud strategy? I mean, how do you guys engage with the cloud service provider? Do you see any challenges in the last whatever time you spent 2-3 months working with the existing cloud service providers?
Absolutely. I think BookMyShow is one of the best use cases for this particular discussion because the company started with the on-premise, data centers, right? I mean, we have Mumbai and the Bangalore data centers, and then gradually got into one of the 5 countries which we support into AWS. And then we actually are creating this global ticketing platform called BigTix, which is actually getting and running into GCP. So we are a completely multi-cloud hybrid cloud. Both terminologies are actually applicable BookMyShow at the moment, but is it the right strategy? I don't know yet, right? Because should I be going to a hybrid cloud or should I be going to a single cloud with hybrid perspective? It's all going to be in the coming days. We'll know more details. But ideally, thinking about the scale at which we operate, one of the strategies I have seen, for example, my last company where I was working with, we were dealing with petabytes of data, right? The moment actually you think about number of customers versus the amount of data which you deal with, your cloud strategy changes. For example, if I actually just say that I'm okay with the multi-cloud strategy because of different cloud providers provide different services and each of the services have the different benefits. The moment actually you look at your amount of data you deal with, straight away you say, you know what, I'm happy with one cloud. The reason is your data in, data out, right? There you go. I mean, your bill will be ticking like crazy, right? So it doesn't matter actually what strategy you want to go with. It's purely depending on what's your data scale. Unless otherwise you have so much money out there, right? To throw it for this. So this whole thing is all about what's the nature of the business, what's the nature of the scale of the data which you deal with, what's the nature of the data going out and transferring each other, right? Based on that, you have to make the right call, but don't go behind a strategy of whether it is multi-cloud or whether it is hybrid. You see what it makes sense. For example, one of the reasons why people prefer multi-cloud is people say that what GCP, for example, XYZ service costs this much versus the AWS, this particular service costs this much less. So you have that competition which you can actually use among these different cloud providers to choose the right services. Especially for early startups like many of the guys actually online, I wouldn't actually worry about even the the cloud provider services. It's too early for actually getting into any of those to begin with. You as a startup company, you should be actually, even if you're going behind a cloud provider, your strategy should be to go for open sources with cloud solution. Otherwise, your bill will get out of your hand like crazy. And one more final thing. Even if you're using cloud providers, your number one thing is don't take your hands off. If your engineering team takes your hands off without fine tuning it every day, right? Just keep watching your bill. So there is no mantra of
Understood.
cloud providers are gonna save your cost. Cloud providers are gonna ease your cost actually if you're not on top of it every day, understanding how are you tuning this code every day, how are you applying the best practices. Otherwise it's not gonna work for you.
Sure. Absolutely. Any inputs here, Karan, on the cost side and how to manage across for early stage startups in terms of, getting a better optimized way of getting a cloud strategy implemented?
No, Mahesh is absolutely right, right? And this is, it corroborates the point I made earlier that, hybrid might be the strategy of choice for, the large majority of organizations worldwide. But at the end of the day, it comes down to your business requirements. So if your business requirements determine that you need to be on premise, for example, let's assume, banks typically are laggards when it comes to adopting cloud technologies, or you're a born in the cloud, new e-tail customer, like say Lending Cart or Bankbazaar. The requirements of both these two sets of customers will be very, very different from each other. And it comes down to business requirements at the end of the day. The business requirements you have based on your organization, your vertical, your size, the skills that you have in-house will determine the cloud strategy that you choose. And then you do your due diligence into the various providers. But I think what's important is to identify what are the outcomes that you're looking for that you want your IT to be able to deliver to you. And once you do that, that will help you unlock what those business requirements are. And that your technology decisions have to flow from there. Don't put the cart before the horse. Everything should flow from what are your business requirements and what are the outcomes you're willing to drive.
So, Adil, what would be your comments on the cloud strategy side of it? What's your view? How would you adopt it?
So we are hybrid. So being a fintech company, I think there's certain things that we need to do on premise, and there's certain things that we can do on the cloud. I think our CTO, Dr. Murari Sridharan, has written extensively on this topic. I think, like Mahesh said, we've done it in a very gradual fashion, and we've done it watching how we manage our costs. But it's definitely a migration, right? That is happening quarter on quarter, as and when compliance allows us to move certain of our applications to the cloud. I think what has really helped is, availability of these services located in India. So I think initially that was one of the requirements which was critical. But now that it's available, right, it's definitely the direction in which Bankbazaar is heading.
Understood. Manish, what would be your view on the cloud strategy? I mean, you manage all the data analytics side of it, and what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think at least for lending up perspective, since lending has been digital from the get-go, it was actually born in the cloud. So almost everything in the cloud for us, we basically manage it, optimize it. So that works well for us. And also, I think the other piece is, when you talk about cloud, it sort of gives you a notion that you don't have control over it, right? But, I think the amount of control, security, monitoring, alerts that we could actually build in that, you will actually get out of the shelf is at another level. But obviously, there are expenses to it. So I think you have to weigh in those. But, you can really create a great architecture and solution either in cloud or locally, even that's okay. But I think your reach and access to different frameworks is definitely out there when we are on the cloud.
Understood. We will lastly coming to you. What would be your recommendation on the cloud strategy side of it?
It depends how early stage you are and what is more important to you, time or money. If time is more important, pick one that your engineers like, go for it. If your product is good, I promise you VCs will line up to give you money. So optimize for time. That is the one thing I've learned. If you get to a larger scale where now your technology bill is a significant percentage of your burn, that's when you start tweaking all of these things. But if you're on your year one, don't worry about it. Just focus on getting the product out. Pick one. They're all roughly the same, unless you get into like millions and millions of dollars of billing and very, very specific requirements.
Sure.
For most basic things, they're all roughly the same.
Well, what would be your view on data security policy or cyber security while choosing a cloud strategy or service provider?
Most cybersecurity failures come because of poor configuration, not because cloud companies are not providing quality security. Right? So you have to know what you're using.
Mm-hmm.
They have all the tools available. You have to use high quality identity management systems so that your developers have good access. Don't share root passwords around.
Sure.
But overall, I don't believe that so far, lots of people have tried to get into our systems. Most quote unquote hackers are hackers. What they end up doing is essentially use our public APIs and get an access token off the phone by decompiling and then start calling APIs. That is hacking. I'm like, okay, fine. You are emulating my app in a script. I can't really stop that. There are ways to stop that, but nobody's actually gotten in. So all of those things are done. Now, if somebody really wants to get after you, like if you're in FinTech, it's super duper important.
Sure.
We are in entertainment. It's not really that critical.
So let me come to you, Mahesh. At BookMyShow, how do you see cybersecurity, and especially with all the cloud strategy and the customer data on the cloud? You guys do a lot of ticketing. The credit cards are there on the file systems, and so how does it work at your end?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the most critical focus areas for us, and we even have a separate dedicated team, not to conflict with the technology team, to make sure that we value the PI, the personally identifiable information, and the PCI data, and all the the data issues across the global and stuff are the Global Privacy Act and stuff, right? I mean, GDPRs, and India has a different Data Protection Act, and so it's of highest relevance, and that means like one good news is like if you're going to, let's say, as an early startup, if you're going to AWS or GCP, their security solutions are very matured enough. So for an early startup company, the last thing they would be worrying about is like, do I have a security expert on, in-house, right? And that will not be their first focus to actually hire somebody and then take care of it. So if you're dealing with the PI data and the PCI data to begin with as an early startup, you should definitely depend on cloud providers solutions to make sure that the DDoS, the denial of service attacks, and all the kind of like protections are out there, so that you're not actually hammering from the day one, right? But if you're actually a matured company, like for example, the stage where at which BMS is, just like a dedicated team of 5 or 10 security folks focusing on all the different areas, right? InfoSec, for example, every application which is going to production with a major release must actually go through the InfoSec security check. Whether it is Apple, Google, or BMS or anybody, it is depending on what kind of process you are actually putting in. Are you actually making sure that the cross-site script, violations and the SQL injections and everything actually taken care, right? And then, honestly speaking, it's all depending on what kind of application you're talking about. For us, with the third-party payment integrations, the amount of PI information which we collect and stuff, it's one of the most critical areas where we actually make sure that day in and day out, with all kind of monitoring and everything, we stay on top of it. We look at the amount of attack happening, right? And how is our ranking against the other industry competitors. All kind of solutions are putting in place to make sure that it is strengthening every day, because as we say, your house is as strong as your weakest door, right? The same principle actually we are also following it. But there are so many other solutions we are putting in to make sure that customer PI data and the PCA data are taken care.
Karan, what's your view on cybersecurity and how you guys help across companies with critical mission critical data in their customer data, and how does NTT help across their customers?
So multiple ways, NetMagic and NTT both have very security is a very important part of everything that we do. All the products that we create, regardless of whether it's cloud, whether it's managed services, whether it's bare metal, whatever it is. One of the philosophies we pursue is making sure that everything is secure by design. So that's a mantra at NetMagic, right? Is it literally secure from the ground up? Having said that, Viral makes a very interesting point where at the end of the day, a service provider will have everything from identity management to denial of, DDoS prevention, which Sanjay talked about, firewalls, IDS, IPS, application firewalls, all of that. So in fact, we have a SOC, which, Security Operations Center, which monitors threats across this rapidly evolving threat landscape, right? And maintains a very robust cybersecurity posture. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to the client, the user. Are you doing stupid things, for example, right? Are you sharing root passwords? Have you made yourself vulnerable to SQL injections? Have you accidentally connected your SQL server to the firewall, right? So security is a little bit of a two-way street. As a provider, it's a provider's job to be able to maintain a SOC of a very high standard, to be able to offer all of the services you need to maintain a very robust cybersecurity posture, to deal with this very diverse threat landscape. But at the end of the day, you can't force those services onto customers, right? Customers need to evaluate those services on merit and to be able to choose them. Having said that, though, obviously a provider, we make sure that our networks are prevented by DDoS. We're monitoring our own, threat landscape through our SOC. all of that. But it also comes down to what the customer is willing to do for their own applications. Today, most vulnerabilities happen through code, and that's not something that a provider has visibility into.
Sure, thanks. So, Adil, coming to you, let me ask you, at Bankbazaar, this tech talent, how do you source it? What's a buy versus, retain or reskill kind of stuff, get new talent on board? And how do you manage the tech teams? What is the change management? And, so what's the strategy which you adopted to build a right tech team at Bankbazaar?
Yeah, so tech is obviously a big investment area because at Bankbazaar, we've tried to stay at the forefront of anything that happens in terms of contactless finance. I think the big focus on our side, right, has been to first onboard top talent. We make sure that we set a very, very high bar when we onboard talent, and then we do a great job of retaining them. I think the entire focus in the last couple of years has been that you're always going to have competition, right? But I think what has helped us and held us in good stead is we very clearly define what our roadmap is. So everyone knows that we have a singular vision. We believe that finance is going contactless, and we're going to be at the cutting edge of building solutions, building innovations that we can then deliver as a platform that all lenders can use. So I think people like the fact that there's a clearly defined roadmap. And along with that, we make sure that the work people do, right, is extremely compelling. So I think whether it is building end-to-end video KYC solution, whether it's making use of data better in terms of defining how to make finance contactless, the work is very exciting. I think what I've been really excited to see, right, is that we've done a great job in terms of retention and upskilling people in the last couple of years, which has helped us keep growing.
Understood. So, Manish, asking you the next question in terms of what kind of transition or change which you see in CIO, CTO roles, and typically on the data management side, still most of them, tech is out of the box, and more tech leaders are supposed to be business guys. What's your view on that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Sanjay. So I think when I look at that specific question, one thing that sort of rings a bell to me is you have to define what your company's IT is going to be, right? And as a CIO, or the way you're actually going to your mindset changes where there is a build versus buy conversation every time that happens. Obviously, as a startup, as any company, you don't have the luxury of building everything around you, right? So, for example, if I had to spend, we're talking about video KYC, we definitely partnered with an external service provider to actually get that. But the integration has to be deep enough where we've ironed out the kinks between the integration and given that feedback to the partner saying this is working for us or not. But there are also very deep IPs that every startup company needs to invest in. And that is where the actual challenges come out from a technical standpoint on, the complexity of the work, how do you make it faster? How do you make it scale? And, that's been, and obviously, tech as a business, right? So obviously, you're supporting a business, but how do you make sure that the investments that you're doing to support a business can be scaled out to as a use case to other businesses also. Those
Mahesh,
are the things.
your view on this?
On Mahesh.
I was just asking Mahesh, what would be your view on CIO, CTO, having more business role than tech?
It's kind of like, again, very, very context specific. And I mean, if any CIO, CTO, you ask them, what are your 4 major roles anytime, right? There are 4 verticals which will they stand up and say. One is the technology, the second is the delivery, the third is the people, the fourth is the strategy and roadmap, right? And depending on the time of the year or depending on the context of the business where you are in, you're actually really playing with these four verticals, right? I mean, from my perspective, it's as simple as that. If I give you the shortest and the sweetest answer, but if you want me to deep dive into any of those, then I can actually do that.
No, I think that that sums it up. I mean, we have an upcoming announcement of goodie bag for startups, which Naveen would like to announce across. But before we do that, a closing comment, one line from Karan in terms of what would be that one advice you would like to leave across for startups in terms of how they should be looking at the tech infrastructure. Each one of you quickly one line.
Uh, so, you can accuse me of plagiarism here, but I think Viral articulated it perfectly. You can optimize for time, you can optimize for cost. At the end of the day, speed is everything. And don't try to overcomplicate things. Keep it simple. You don't need to go down, say, for example, a PaaS or a platform as a service rabbit hole if infrastructure as a service is going to suit your requirements to the T. If all you need are servers, network, storage, managed services, and your in-house team can handle everything as code, great. You don't then simplify your requirements, let everything flow from those business requirements, identify what are the outcomes you need to drive, and keep it as simple as possible.
Understood.
Viral, I apologize. I think I blatantly plagiarized whatever you've been saying, but I agree with it wholeheartedly.
Adil, what would be your, one closing comment on how startups should be looking at their tech infrastructure and, whole strategy?
Yeah. I think the one idea I want to leave startups with, right, is that I know that this year has been tough, and I know that COVID's probably set everyone back at least by 1 year at a minimum. But if you do the right things now, right, and you adapt to the way the future is going to look like, 3 years from now, you're going to be better off than you were if things were going as normal. So just get ready for the new world, be agile, and you'll be better off 3 years from now than you would have been if this never happened.
Absolutely. Super statement by Adil. Manish, your closing comments, what would you recommend across startups should be doing?
On a similar line, fail fast, take early feedback from customers and, have a vision, but, be flexible about the details.
Awesome. Great advice. Mahesh, your closing statement.
Absolutely. I mean, depending on where they are actually in their journey, do the right mindset. Make sure that you have the right mindset for the right time. Depending on where you are, you need to have the current phase of development, and make sure that people you're working on the same page, and then keep preparing them for change. Because a startup, the biggest thing is you're going to go through the change much more often than a much matured company actually go through. So if you're not preparing the people for the change along the way, you're going to be in for a lot of surprises when the VP of engineering and SVP of engineering and comes on board. And finally, just slow down at times and spread the right behavior. That's it.
Awesome. That's awesome. Viral, your closing comments, how you would be looking at helping out and give some tips to startups.
I mean, everything everybody said is super valuable. So I'll try coming up with something that's not one of theirs. For most startups right now, you guys are not selling technology. You guys are selling products, you're selling experiences, you're selling loans, policies, other financial instruments. You are selling, if you're a delivery startup, you're selling other things. So technology is an enabler. So always keep in mind that your job is actually to make somebody else's job easier. So just keep thinking along those lines, and everything everybody else said.
No, that was a super statement, Viral. I think you hit it on the nail. I always say to a lot of my portfolio companies and the startups which pitch to us, saying that convert your product into business, right? At the end of the day, customer is looking at what problem you are trying to solve of theirs rather than, what's your product, right? So So it's very rightly said across Viral. Over to you, Naveen. And it was a fun. Thank you, Karan, Mahesh, Adil, Manish, and Viral. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
spending such a valuable time and sharing your insights. Appreciate it. Over to you, Naveen.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Folks, I would now like to invite Srinivas Prasad, who is the VP of Security Practice at NTT Netmagic. He's basically the Santa Claus who's coming early to announce goodie bags now. So, Srini, are you there? Did we get Srini?
Yeah, yeah, Naveen, I'm here. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. That was a great panel discussion. Thank you to all the panelists for providing such great insights. We heard very relevant points like hybrid cloud, containers, cybersecurity, resiliency, etc. in the last 1 hour, right? Could we please change the slide? NTT Netmagic is offering services package worth rupees 3 lakhs to everyone attending the session, which covers a lot of these points, right? This package includes 50,000 worth credit on Netmagic's own VMware verified public cloud offering called Simply Cloud. Simply Cloud is an on-demand, scalable, elastic cloud solution for all your infrastructure and container requirements. Karan spoke about Karan spoke about the rapidly changing threat landscape that we've been reading and hearing across a lot of news articles that have been coming up about the different threats and data leaks that the world is seeing, especially during the COVID times when a lot of people are working from home. We've been seeing a lot of data breaches happening throughout the world. Ransomwares have now evolved into data exfiltration from just encryption. Endpoint attacks are the most prevalent attacks today. So to counter this, Netmagic is also offering 25K worth of service credit for security audit and endpoint detection and response. Right? Endpoint detection and response is one of our premium services that provides comprehensive machine learning and anti-malware execution prevention with real-time pre and post-infection protection. The next offer in the digital rocket, as we are calling this, is a 25,000 worth POC credits for Netmagic's disaster recovery as a service, which can help you build resiliency for your availability of the infrastructure. Now, disaster recovery as a service from Netmagic is a cost-optimized, world-class DR solution with infrastructure spread across various seismic zones to fulfill all your business continuity requirements. Along with this, we heard a lot about multi-cloud, AWS, Google, Azure. We are also offering 1 lakh worth of free credit for our cloud management platform that works across all of these multi-cloud setups for our customers. Netmagic Simply Insight Services, which is powered by VMware Cloud Health, which brings in visibility across all of this multi-clouds, helps bring in cost optimization with automation and actionable recommendations. We are also offering 1 lakh worth free credit for the service to all the attendees. You can avail all of these services worth 3 lakhs by reaching out to us. In addition to all the service package that we are including in this digital rocket, we also offer NTT Netmagic also offers end-to-end ICT services ranging from high density enterprise co-location services to customized fit out solutions. We also offer private cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud services, infrastructure management services, integrated network services, and a host of managed security services that each of you can opt for. Thank you so much. Over to you, Naveen.
Thank you, Srini. So, folks, that closes our session. But just one announcement: you will have to write to us in order to avail this, and then we will also help you with the steps that you need to follow in order to availing all these free bags and goodies. So, please write to us, and I'm just going to be typing my email address. And if you need to talk to anybody in NTT, there is a link, an email one, which is marketing at NTT Netmagic. I will publish that as well. And thank you all once again for joining us. It was a great session. I especially would love to thank all the panelists, Sanjay for pitching in the last minute, and also for Sharad and NTT folks, because I think it has taken a village to put this together. And folks, please be on the lookout. This is just the beginning of a series. We're coming up with a lot of mentoring sessions and validation sessions. We are getting senior peers to come and validate tech for early stage startups. And some of the panelists here have also kind of graciously accepted to do that. So keep a watch out for all the announcements coming up. And thank you all once again. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have anything and you want to ask any of the panelists any more questions, and we'll be happy to kind of, broker the Q&A for you folks. Have a safe evening, and we shall all see you soon. Next week, we start off with another fresh round of webinars. And once again, happy Diwali, everyone. Thank you all.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks.
It's been lovely.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Viral. Thanks, Karan. Thanks,
Thanks.
Manish. Adil, thanks.
Thank you so
Evening
much.
all.
Thank you. Srini, thank you. Naitik, Prasanjit, all of you, thank you very much. Sharad, if you're there, thanks a ton.